Question number 6, Tom Arthur.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with the UK Government regarding the impact Brexit could have on climate change policy in Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
Scottish ministers have had no formal discussions with UK ministers to date on the impact of Brexit on climate change policy, nor have we seen UK Government reports or impact assessments in spite of repeated requests. In May 2017, I wrote to Nick Hurd, the UK's former Climate Change Minister, asking for formal involvement in negotiations on the UK's future participation in the EU emissions trading system, given how central that is to us meeting our climate change targets. We had no response to that letter. On 31st of October, I wrote jointly with the Minister for UK Negotiations on Scotland's place in Europe to Greg Clark, Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, to request immediate discussions on future EU ETS membership. Claire Perry, the Minister of State for Climate Change, has replied offering a discussion. However, formal engagement on future participation in the scheme should involve all 4 administrations, and I made that point in my response. If the UK Government has an assessment of the impact of Brexit on climate change in the UK, including Scotland, it would be in the national interest to make it public immediately. It is vital that the UK Government provides clarity and certainty to people, businesses and communities in Scotland.
Tom Arthur.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Given that 64% of the UK's imports in low-carbon equipment comes from the European Union, does the Cabinet Secretary share my concern that should the UK leave the EU without a deal, the subsequent loss of free trade would make reducing carbon emissions more expensive, consequently making climate mitigation more difficult for both Scotland and the UK as a whole?
Walking away from the EU with no trade deal would be a disaster for the Scottish and UK economies. The renewable energy sector, which now supports 26,000 jobs in Scotland with a turnover of £5 billion annually, has been a major driver of Scotland's economy in recent years. And will play an important role in helping us deal with climate change in the future. And the member is right that the sector relies on the EU for low-carbon equipment. That is why the negotiations to determine the future relationship with Europe will need to consider this important area of policy in detail, with a view to safeguarding Scotland's key interests and maintaining our place as a progressive leader on climate action. Presiding Officer, it really isn't good enough that we have absolutely no answers, no information at this stage in the game to allow us to plan for the future.